My name is Linda, and I am 28 years old, though if you were to look into my eyes on a rainy autumn evening, you might see the ghost of a 15-year-old girl who was left to drown in the dark. 13 years ago, on a night when the sky tore itself apart in a violent, unforgiving tempest, my father looked me dead in the eye, his face twisted in a mask of absolute disgust, and uttered the words that would fracture my reality forever. He told me to get out, stating in no uncertain terms that he did not need a sick, broken daughter like me polluting his home. I was 15 years old, soaking wet, shivering so violently my teeth ached, and entirely devoid of a place to go in a world that had suddenly turned its back on me. The catalyst for this unimaginable cruelty was not a crime I had committed, nor a genuine moral failing on my part, but rather a lie. It was a calculated, meticulous, and deeply malicious lie spun by my younger sister Chloe, a lie so perfectly tailored to exploit my parents' deepest biases that they swallowed it without a single moment of hesitation or inquiry. And just like that, with the slamming of a heavy oak door and the howling of the wind, I was erased from the history of my own family. But the universe, in its infinite and often mysterious complexity, has a way of balancing the scales. Exactly 3 hours after I was cast out into the freezing deluge, a police officer made a phone call to my parents, instructing them to come to the county memorial hospital. I had been struck by a car. When my father walked into that sterile, brightly lit hospital room and saw the woman sitting quietly in the vinyl chair beside my bed, his hands began to shake with a tremor so violent he could not hide it. He stammered, his voice failing him, asking how she could possibly be there. The woman sitting beside my bed was Dr. Victoria Vance, one of the most revered and formidable professors of educational equity in the entire state, a woman whose academic prowess was matched only by her fierce protective spirit. She was the one who had found me bleeding on the side of the road, the one who had cradled my head in her lap while the rain washed away my tears, the one who had saved my life when my own blood had abandoned me. That single, horrific night changed the trajectory of my existence, setting me on a path that would eventually lead me to stand on a brightly lit stage, looking down at the very people who had destroyed me, holding all the power in my hands. But before I can explain the sheer, unadulterated satisfaction of that moment, I need to take you back to the beginning, to the suffocating environment of the house where I learned that my sister's manufactured tears were always louder, always more urgent, and always more valued than my most monumental achievements. I learned the harsh lessons of my family's dynamic long before I understood the concept of injustice. In the Sterling household, Chloe was the sun around which we were all expected to orbit, a fragile, delicate flower who required constant pruning and attention, while I was merely the background foliage, expected to photosynthesize in silence and ask for nothing. When I was 11 years old, I spent 3 months building a complex working water filtration system for the regional science fair. It was a masterpiece of middle school engineering, utilizing layers of activated charcoal, sand, and gravel to purify murky water into a crystalline liquid. I beat out 40 other students, taking home the coveted blue ribbon and a scholarship certificate that made my chest swell with a pride I had never before experienced. I ran all the way home, my lungs burning, the ribbon clutched in my hand like a sacred relic. I burst through the front door, ready to share my triumph, and found my mother, Helen, in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. I shouted my victory, my voice echoing off the tile backsplash. She smiled, a polite, fleeting expression, and gave me a brief, perfunctory hug, murmuring that it was wonderful. But before she could even ask to see the ribbon, the front door opened again, and Chloe walked in from her ballet practice. She was 8 years old, her face flushed red, tears already streaming down her cheeks in thick, dramatic tracks. She sobbed that she had messed up her pirouette, that the instructor had sighed, that everyone in the studio had laughed at her. Instantly, the atmosphere in the kitchen shifted. My mother's arms left me, her demeanor softening into an expression of profound, agonizing empathy. She knelt down, pulling Chloe into a fierce embrace, cooing soothing words, promising that she was perfect and that the world was simply too cruel to understand her sensitivity. I stood there in the middle of the kitchen, the blue ribbon dangling limply from my fingers, entirely invisible. Nobody asked to see my prize. Nobody asked about the water filtration system. That was the pattern, etched into the very foundation of our home. Chloe needed more attention. Chloe was sensitive. Chloe required careful, delicate handling, as if she were made of spun glass, while I was made of iron and expected to bear the weight of the world without bending. By the time I was 14, I had stopped showing them my report cards altogether. Straight A's, perfect attendance, and teacher accolades simply could not compete with the high-stakes drama of Chloe's B- in home economics or her perceived social slights. When I was awarded a full scholarship to attend a prestigious, month-long summer environmental science camp, an opportunity that would have connected me with actual researchers and set me on a path to a top-tier university, I was ecstatic. I brought the acceptance letter to the dinner table, my hands trembling with excitement. My father, Arthur, barely glanced up from his newspaper, offering a dismissive nod and a muttered, "That's nice." But Chloe, sitting across from me, immediately burst into tears. She wailed about how unfair it was that I got to go away, how I was abandoning her, how she would be all alone in the house for a month. My mother immediately reached across the table, squeezing Chloe's shoulder, her eyes hardening as she looked at me. She suggested, in that sickeningly sweet tone she used when delivering ultimatums, that I should skip the camp this year, that my sister needed me here, that family unity was more important than my selfish little hobbies. Chloe finished the sentence for her, declaring that I was being cruel. I didn't go to the camp. They grounded me for being disruptive to the family peace. They told me it was about being understanding, about being the bigger person, about sacrificing my desires for the emotional stability of the household. I learned to be small. I learned to be quiet. I learned to take up as little space as possible, to fold my ambitions into tiny invisible squares and hide them in the deepest pockets of my mind. But the breaking point was coming, hurtling toward me like a freight train in the dark, and I was entirely unprepared for the devastation it would bring. The lying started small, almost imperceptibly, the way a crack in a dam begins as a mere seep of water. Chloe, now 12, would borrow my things without asking. My favorite sweaters, my sketchbooks, my carefully organized notes. When I would mention it to her, always gently, always trying to avoid a confrontation, she would deny it with a straight face. She would claim she never touched my sweater, even when it was literally draped over her desk chair. My mother would sigh, rubbing her temples, and tell me not to start fights, not to be so accusatory, not to make Chloe feel like a criminal in her own home. Then the stakes escalated. Money went missing from my mother's wallet, $50 she had set aside for the grocery run. Chloe, without a moment's hesitation, claimed she had seen me hovering near the purse that morning. I hadn't been anywhere near the kitchen. I had left for school at dawn to study in the library. But my father called me into his study, a room that always smelled of stale coffee and leather, and demanded to know if I had stolen from my mother. I looked him in the eye and told the truth. I told him Chloe was lying. His jaw tightened, a muscle feathering in his cheek, and he told me never to accuse my sister of being a liar. He told me he was disappointed in me, that he thought I was better than this, that I was developing a concerning streak of dishonesty. I lost my phone for a month. I lost the opportunity to attend the science camp the following year, because, as my mother explained with a sigh, they couldn't trust me with independence or off-campus activities if I was stealing from the family. I remember looking up at the staircase and seeing Chloe peering over the banister. When she thought our parents weren't looking, she smiled at me. It was a cold, triumphant, terrifying smile. That stolen $50 was just a test run. Chloe was learning the boundaries of her power, discovering that she could manipulate reality, bend the truth, and emerge not only unscathed, but victorious, while I was punished for the crime of existing in her orbit. The pattern escalated with a terrifying momentum. A broken heirloom vase in the living room? My fault, because I had been running in the halls. A failed math test that Chloe hadn't studied for? My fault, because I should have spent my evening tutoring her instead of reading my own books. A vicious rumor at school about Chloe cheating on a history quiz? My fault, because I must have started it out of jealousy. I stopped defending myself. What was the point? They believed her tears over my truth every single time, without exception, without fail. Her victimhood was an absolute shield, and my logic was a weapon that simply bounced off it. By 15, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. I was present, but entirely invisible, only manifesting when they needed a scapegoat, a repository for their frustrations, a dumping ground for their anxieties. I started spending every waking moment outside the house. I lived in the public library, in the school lab, in the bleachers of the football field after the games were over, anywhere but the suffocating, gaslit environment of my home. I told myself I just needed to survive until college. 2 more years. I could make it 2 more years. I could endure anything for 730 days. I was wrong. The end came in October, during my junior year, wrapped in the guise of a torrential apocalyptic storm. Everything felt heavy that week, the air pressure dropping so low it made my ears pop and my head ache. There was a boy at school named Julian. He was in my AP chemistry class, a genuinely nice guy with a brilliant mind for organic structures, but a terrible inability to balance complex chemical equations. He had asked me for help a few times, and I had stayed after class to explain stoichiometry, drawing diagrams on the chalkboard until the janitor threatened to lock us in. That was it. Just homework help. But Chloe had a crush on him. It was a massive, obsessive, all-consuming infatuation. She would walk past my classroom during passing periods just to catch a glimpse of him through the window. She would practice writing Chloe Sterling Hayes in the margins of her notebooks, surrounded by little drawn hearts. I had seen it once when I went to her room to return a borrowed pen. The tension in the house was palpable, a thick, suffocating blanket of unspoken resentment. On a Tuesday, Julian caught me at my locker. He smiled, a genuine, easy expression, and thanked me for the help, saying I had saved his grade. I smiled back, told him it was no problem, and suggested we study together in the library for the upcoming midterm. He agreed, said the library sounded cool, and walked away. I turned around, closing my locker, and saw Chloe standing 20 feet down the hallway. She was staring at us, her face as pale as chalk, her eyes wide with a mixture of fury and devastation. That night at dinner, she barely spoke. She just pushed her food around her plate, her eyes downcast, radiating an aura of profound misery. My mother kept asking if she felt okay, if she was coming down with something. Chloe would just shrug, offer a weak, trembling smile, and say nothing. I should have known then that her silence was far more dangerous than her tears. Silence was when she was plotting. On Thursday, I had a visiting lecturer in my advanced biology class, Dr. Victoria Vance from the State University. She was giving a guest lecture on educational equity and the systemic failures that push marginalized students out of the academic pipeline. I was captivated. I stayed after class to ask her questions about her research, about the intersection of poverty and academic tracking. She seemed genuinely impressed by my curiosity, my line of questioning. She handed me her business card, looking me dead in the eye with an intensity that made me stand a little straighter. She told me I had a brilliant, curious mind, and that I should never let anyone dim that light. I smiled, thanked her, and tucked the card into my backpack. I had absolutely no idea that this woman would be the architect of my salvation. A week later, the storm warnings began. It was going to be a massive system, a historic low-pressure front bringing hurricane-force winds and torrential, blinding rain. Everyone in town was preparing, boarding up windows, stocking up on water and bread, charging their phones. Chloe still wasn't talking to me. She wouldn't even look in my direction, treating me with a cold, calculated indifference that set my nerves on edge. I remember thinking, with a profound sense of relief, that at least I would have the weekend to catch up on my homework in peace, safe inside while the world raged outside. I had no idea what she was planning. I had no idea that my life, as I knew it, was already over. Friday night, the rain started around 6 o'clock, hitting the roof like a barrage of gravel. We ate dinner in a suffocating, heavy silence. The weather alert kept buzzing on my father's phone, casting an eerie blue light across his face. Wind advisories, flash flood warnings. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Chloe picked at her pasta, and I could feel her eyes on me, a physical weight pressing against my skin. When I glanced up, she would quickly look away, her jaw clenched. After dinner, I retreated to my room, closing the door softly, and started my English literature essay. Outside, the wind was picking up, howling like a wounded animal, rattling the window panes in their frames. It was the kind of storm that made you profoundly grateful for the walls that surrounded you, for the roof over your head. Around 8 o'clock, I heard it, crying, downstairs. It was Chloe, loud, heaving, theatrical sobs that echoed through the ventilation shafts. I froze, my pen hovering over my notebook. I listened. I heard my mother's voice, soothing and panicked, asking what was wrong, telling her to talk. More crying. I waited, my heart rate beginning to accelerate. Maybe she had twisted her ankle. Maybe she had failed a test. Maybe she had broken another rule. Then I heard my father's voice. It was sharp, angry, vibrating with a rage that made the floorboards seem to tremble. He roared for me to get downstairs. Now. My stomach dropped into a bottomless abyss. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead, and walked slowly to the door. Each step on the staircase felt like a march to the gallows. When I reached the living room, the scene was exactly as I had feared, yet entirely unimaginable. Chloe was curled up on the sofa, her face buried in my mother's shoulder, her body shaking with violent tremors. My mother was stroking her hair, shooting daggers at me with her eyes. My father stood by the fireplace, his arms crossed over his chest, his face a mottled, furious red. I asked, my voice barely a whisper, what was going on. Chloe looked up. Her eyes were swollen, her face streaked with tears and mascara. She looked at me, and for just a fraction of a second, less than a heartbeat, I saw something else behind the tears. Something cold, something calculating and utterly devoid of empathy. Then the mask slipped back into place. My father told me, his voice like cracking ice, to tell them what I had done. Chloe's lip trembled. She asked me, her voice breaking, why I hated her so much. I stepped closer, bewildered, telling her I didn't hate her. She hiccuped, sobbing, and asked why I had been spreading vicious, disgusting rumors about her at school. My mind went completely blank. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I asked her what rumors. She listed them, her voice gaining strength, accusing me of saying she was promiscuous, of saying she cheated, of saying she was a pathological liar. I told her I didn't know what she was talking about, that I had never said those things. My mother interrupted, her voice quiet, deadly calm, telling me not to lie, to just not lie to her. I was about to find out the cost of their blind faith. I stammered, my voice shaking, denying everything, telling them someone must be using my accounts. My father's voice cracked like thunder, telling me to stop lying. Chloe pulled out her phone, her hands trembling dramatically, and showed my mother a screenshot. It was a group chat, filled with messages I had supposedly sent. Vicious, cruel, entirely fabricated attacks on Chloe's character. But there was my name at the top, my profile picture. I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. I told them I didn't write those, that someone had forged it. My father told me to stop, Chloe whispered, her voice dripping with betrayal, that I knew she liked Julian, but I had been flirting with him, trying to make her look stupid, trying to steal him. I tried to explain, my voice rising in desperation, that he had asked me for help with chemistry, that we were just study partners. Chloe's voice rose to a shriek. She accused me of staying after class with him, of meeting him at the library, of trying to undermine her. And then she delivered the final fatal blow. She pulled up her sleeve, revealing a dark, ugly purple bruise on her forearm. She claimed that last week I had pushed her down the stairs. I stared at the bruise, my mind reeling. I told them I had never touched her. My father demanded to know how she got it. In a moment of sheer, unadulterated panic, I blurted out that maybe she did it herself. The words hung in the air, heavy and toxic. Chloe's eyes went wide, filling with fresh, crystalline tears. She asked, her voice a fragile whisper, if I really thought she would hurt herself just to frame me. I was shouting now, desperate, begging them to see the pattern, to see that she was lying, that she had been lying for years. My father took a step toward me, his face contorted, asking if it was true, if I had been bullying my sister, making her life miserable. I begged them to listen, to just hear me out. But he slammed his fist onto the marble mantelpiece, the sound echoing like a gunshot. He said he had heard enough of my excuses. My mother chimed in, her voice dripping with disappointment, saying she thought they had raised me better than this, that I was cruel, that I was sick. The word hit me like a physical blow. Sick. I told them I wasn't sick. My father told me I needed professional help, that something was fundamentally wrong with my brain, with my soul. And then he pointed a trembling finger at the front door. He told me to get out. He told me he didn't need a sick daughter like me in his house. The words carved themselves into my flesh, branding me. Sick daughter, like I was diseased, broken, a defect in their perfect family. I looked at my mother, begging her silently with my eyes to say something, to stop him, to tell him this was insane, that I was 15, that it was a hurricane outside. She turned her back to me, wrapping her arms tighter around Chloe. I grabbed my jacket from the hook by the door, my hands shaking so violently I could barely pull the zipper. I opened the door, and the wind nearly tore it from its hinges. The rain hit me like a physical wall, cold, angry, blinding. Within seconds, I was soaked to the bone. I stood on the porch for a single agonizing moment, waiting. Maybe my father would come after me. Maybe he would realize the absurdity of his actions, apologize, say he had overreacted. The door stayed closed. The deadbolt slid into place with a final echoing click. I started walking. I had nowhere to go. Just away. Away from that house, away from Chloe's lies, away from parents who believed I was a monster. My phone buzzed in my pocket. 8% battery. I pulled it out, the screen cracked and blurred by rain, and tried calling my friend Sarah. No answer. I tried Jessica. Straight to voicemail. It was Friday night in a storm. Everyone was home, safe, dry, with their families. Not me. The wind whipped my hair across my face, blinding me. The rain came down in solid, impenetrable sheets. I could barely see 10 feet ahead. Cars drove past, their tires hissing on the wet asphalt, spraying dirty water over my legs. No one stopped. I headed toward the public library, thinking I could wait out the storm in the alcove by the back doors. It was closed, dark, locked tight. The bus station was 2 miles away. If I could make it there, I could sit inside, stay warm, figure out what to do. I walked. Every step was a monumental effort. My shoes were soaked through, squelching with every footfall, heavy as lead. My jacket clung to my skin, leaching the heat from my body. I was so cold my teeth chattered uncontrollably. Thunder cracked directly overhead, a deafening roar that shook the ground beneath my feet. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the desolate, flooded streets in a stark, ghostly white. I thought about turning back. I thought about knocking on the door, falling to my knees, begging to come home, promising to be quiet, promising to take the blame for everything. But then I remembered the look on my father's face, the absolute, unadulterated disgust. I couldn't unsee it. Sick daughter. Maybe he was right. Maybe something was wrong with me. Why else would my own family choose a lie over me every single time without fail? The bus station was still a mile away. The rain got heavier, the wind stronger, pushing me sideways, threatening to knock me into the street. I didn't see the headlights until it was almost too late. I was crossing at an intersection. The light was green. I was sure it was green, but the rain was coming down so hard, the wind was howling so loudly, and I couldn't see clearly through the deluge. The car came out of nowhere. The headlights were bright, blinding, piercing the darkness like twin suns. A horn blared, a long, terrifying sound of panic. Brakes screeched, a horrible metallic scream. I tried to jump back, but my legs wouldn't obey. The impact threw me sideways, a violent, sickening force that lifted me off my feet. I felt my body hit the hood of the car, the metal denting beneath me, and then I hit the pavement. Hard. My head cracked against the asphalt, a sickening thud that echoed inside my skull. Pain exploded through my brain, white hot and all-consuming, erasing every thought, every memory, every sensation except the sheer, overwhelming agony. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Rain poured into my mouth, my eyes, my nose. Everything was sideways, wrong, tilted at an impossible angle. I heard a car door slam, the sound of footsteps running, splashing through the deep puddles. A woman's voice, panicked, breathless, screaming for someone to call 911. Her hands were on my shoulder, gentle but firm. She told me to stay still, to stay with her. She asked my name. I blinked, trying to focus through the blood and the rain. Her face was blurry, dark hair plastered to her cheeks, rain streaming down her face. She looked familiar. Had I seen her before? I tried to speak, but only a wet cough came out. I tasted copper. I managed to whisper, my voice barely a rasp, asking for my parents. She asked for their number, saying she would call them. I coughed again, the pain in my ribs flaring. I told her they didn't want me. I told her they kicked me out, said I was sick, didn't want me anymore. She stared down at me, the rain pouring down between us, and I saw something shift in her expression. The panic faded, replaced by a profound, chilling horror. She told me I was going to be okay, but her voice shook. She promised me I was going to be okay. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer, cutting through the sound of the storm. Her face was the last thing I saw before the darkness rose up and swallowed me whole. I don't remember the ambulance. I don't remember the ride to the hospital, the flashing lights, the jostling of the stretcher. My first clear memory is sound, the rhythmic mechanical beeping of monitors, the harsh fluorescent buzz of the overhead lights, the sharp sterile smell of antiseptic and bleach, and a voice, the woman from the accident. She was speaking to a doctor, her voice firm, authoritative, leaving no room for argument. She told them I had a severe concussion, possible internal bleeding, and that they needed to keep me for observation. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt like they were made of lead. Everything hurt. A deep, throbbing agony radiated from my skull, my ribs, my legs. I heard her voice again. She said she was staying. She said she wasn't leaving me alone. A nurse asked if she was family. She replied, her voice cold and sharp as cut glass, that she was the one who had hit me with her car, and she was staying until my parents arrived. Time passed in a blur of pain and medication. I drifted in and out of consciousness, floating in a sea of agony and morphine. At some point, I heard new voices, familiar voices. My father sounding strained, tight like a violin string pulled to the breaking point. My mother whispering nervously. And then the woman's voice, Dr. Victoria Vance. She introduced herself. I heard the click of recognition in my mother's voice. Dr. Vance was a professor at the State University, the Dean of Graduate Studies. Her tone could have frozen boiling water. She stated, calmly and clearly, that she was the one who had hit her daughter with her car tonight. My father stammered, trying to offer an apology, trying to explain that it was an accident, that they didn't blame her. Dr. Vance cut him off. She asked, her voice rising with a terrifying, controlled fury, why a 15-year-old girl was out in the middle of a hurricane, soaking wet, alone at night. Silence. She demanded an answer. My father mumbled something about a family situation, a discipline issue. Dr. Vance repeated the words slowly, savoring their absurdity. She asked what kind of discipline issue involved putting a child out in a lethal storm. My mother tried to defend themselves, saying it wasn't like that. Dr. Vance pressed the attack. She told them that before I lost consciousness, I had told her that my parents didn't want me anymore, that they had told me I was sick. More silence. Then Chloe's voice. Small, scared, trembling. She said I was lying, that I was making it up, that I was barely conscious and didn't know what I was saying. Dr. Vance dismissed her instantly. She said she heard me clearly. I heard the rustle of fabric, footsteps walking away from my bed. Dr. Vance's voice moved closer to the door. She told them she needed to speak with a social worker. Now. My father tried to assert his authority, his voice booming, saying that wouldn't be necessary, that we were her parents, that it was a private family matter. Dr. Vance's response was a masterclass in verbal destruction. She told him that the moment he sent a minor out into a deadly storm, it stopped being a private family matter and became a crime. She told him she wasn't leaving until she knew I was safe. A different voice entered the room, a police officer. He told my father they needed to ask some questions, that a 15-year-old had been hit by a car at 11 at night in a major storm, and they needed to understand why she wasn't home. My mother's voice was shaking now, the facade crumbling. I tried to open my eyes, managing to flutter them open just a fraction. Everything was blurry, a smear of light and shadow. I saw my father's silhouette, rigid, defensive. Chloe behind him, shrinking into the background. Dr. Vance noticed my movement. She ordered everyone out. Now. My father started to protest, but Dr. Vance cut him down, reminding him she was the doctor in this room and she was ordering them out. Footsteps retreated. Voices faded. The door clicked shut. I felt Dr. Vance's hand on mine. It was warm, solid, protective. She leaned close, her voice a gentle whisper, promising me that I was safe now. I wanted to believe her, but the word safe was a foreign concept, a language I had forgotten how to speak. I hadn't felt safe in years. I closed my eyes and let the darkness take me again. When I woke up 3 days later, the room was quiet. My parents were gone. Dr. Vance was still there. She had kept her promise. She hadn't left me alone. The concussion was severe, and I spent 4 days in that hospital bed. Dr. Vance came every single day. She brought books. She sat by my bed. She talked to me about college, about science, about futures I had never dared to imagine. She spoke to me not as a child, but as an intellectual equal. My parents visited exactly once. They brought a plastic bag of clothes and some schoolwork. They stood at the foot of my bed, uncomfortable, shifting their weight, looking like strangers in hospital scrubs. My mother said they were glad I was okay. My father nodded, saying I had given them quite a scare. Neither of them said sorry. Neither of them explained. Neither of them asked if I wanted to come home. Chloe didn't come at all. On day 5, a social worker arrived. Her name was Ms. Gable. She had kind, tired eyes and asked questions in a gentle, non-judgmental voice about my home, my family, what happened that night. I told her everything. I told her about Chloe's lies, about my parents choosing the lie over my truth, about the words, sick daughter. Ms. Gable listened, her pen scratching steadily against her notepad. She told me I had options. She told me I didn't have to go back. I asked, my voice cracking, where else I would go. The door opened and Dr. Vance stepped in. She said with absolute certainty that I could stay with her. I stared at her, bewildered. She explained to Miss Gable that it would be a temporary foster placement until we figured out something permanent, if I wanted it. She looked at the social worker and said she had already started the paperwork. I asked her, my voice trembling, why she would do that, why she would take in a stranger. Dr. Vance sat on the edge of my bed. She looked at me with an intensity that took my breath away. She told me that someone had once done it for her. When she was 17, her family had kicked her out. A teacher had taken her in, and it had changed her life. She touched my hand, her skin warm against my cold fingers. She told me I was brilliant, that I had potential most kids never dream of, and that I should never let anyone tell me I was sick. She told me not to let anyone dim my light. I started crying. I couldn't stop. The tears came in heavy, ragged sobs, 13 years of suppressed grief and pain pouring out of me. Dr. Vance said softly that she would understand if I wanted to go home, but if I wanted something different, she was here. I made my decision in that hospital room, looking at the woman who had saved my life, who had fought my parents, who had seen my worth when my own blood had discarded me. I chose different. 6 months later, I was a different person. Same name, different life. Dr. Vance's house was a sanctuary. It was quiet, organized, full of towering bookshelves, thriving houseplants, and the soft, constant murmur of classical music. She gave me the guest room and told me I could decorate it however I wanted. I transferred to a new high school, starting fresh. No one knew about Chloe, about my parents, about being the sick daughter. I was just Linda, smart, focused, finally free to breathe without the crushing weight of expectations and gaslighting. Dr. Vance, who insisted I call her Victoria, exposed me to a world I had never known existed. She took me to university lectures, to research symposiums, to dinners with professors discussing policy, equity, and systemic change. She taught me that education was freedom, that knowledge was power, and that no one could ever take that away from me. I threw myself into my schoolwork with a ferocious, burning passion. Straight A's weren't just grades anymore. They were proof. Proof I wasn't sick. Proof I wasn't broken. Proof I wasn't wrong. Victoria taught me about grant writing, about scholarships, about the systemic structures that help kids like me, kids from difficult situations, kids who need a second chance. She told me once, over a dinner of pasta and salad in her sunlit kitchen, that I was going to do something important someday. She said she could see it in my eyes. I thought about my old family sometimes. I wondered if Chloe ever told them the truth. If my father ever regretted those words. If my mother ever stood up for me. But mostly, I didn't think about them at all. I heard things through mutual acquaintances. Chloe was doing fine, still the golden child, still the center of attention. My parents had removed all my photos from the house, scrubbing me from their history like I had never existed. Good, I thought. Let them erase me. I was building something better. By my senior year, I had a plan. I was going to college, majoring in education policy, building something that would help kids who fall through the cracks, kids whose families fail them. I was going to turn my pain into purpose. College was a blur of study sessions, late nights in the library, and slowly, painstakingly learning to trust again. I got a full scholarship to a prestigious university, aided by a glowing, impassioned recommendation letter from Victoria. I majored in education policy and social justice, minoring in psychology. I wanted to understand systems, to figure out why some kids got help, and others fell through cracks wide enough to swallow them whole. Summers, I interned at nonprofits, grant writing organizations, youth advocacy groups. I learned how money moved, how programs started, how to turn empathy into actionable, systemic change. I graduated summa cum laude. Victoria cried at my ceremony, whispering how incredibly proud she was. I got hired immediately as a research coordinator at a university education department. Victoria's university, actually. Different building, professional distance, but still connected. At 25, I had an idea. A scholarship program for students from difficult family situations. Kids who had been kicked out, abused, neglected. Kids who needed a second chance. I called it the Phoenix Fellowship. Victoria helped me write the grant proposals. We secured funding from 3 major organizations, launched the program at 1 university as a pilot, then 2, then 5. By the time I was 27, we had awarded over $200,000 in scholarships, helped 47 students stay in school, stay alive, stay hopeful. Media started paying attention. local newspapers, education journals. I gave interviews, spoke at conferences, always telling my story vaguely. A 15-year-old girl who was told she didn't belong. I never named names. One day, my colleague Marcus knocked on my office door. He told me I was being considered for a keynote speaker at a graduation ceremony. I asked which university. Crestview University. My stomach dropped. That was my sister's school. Marcus blinked, confused, asking if I had a sister. I told him quietly, not anymore, but yes, she graduates this spring. Marcus asked if he should decline on my behalf. I stared at my desk, at the scholarship applications stacked in neat piles. 47 students, 47 second chances. I asked him what the theme was. He said it was resilience and educational equity, and that the president had specifically requested me because my work embodied everything the ceremony should represent. My work, the scholarship program born from being thrown away, from being called sick. I asked if I would have creative control over my speech. He said complete control. I thought about Chloe sitting in her cap and gown, smiling, probably bragging about her perfect family, her supportive parents. I thought about my parents in the audience, proud, oblivious, still believing they had made the right choice 13 years ago. I thought about standing on that stage, telling my story, not for revenge, for closure. I told Marcus I needed to talk to Victoria. That night over dinner, I laid it out. I told her they had no idea I existed in this capacity, no idea I had built this. Victoria set down her fork and asked me what I wanted to happen. I told her I wanted to close the chapter properly, not with anger, with truth. And if they were hurt, well, they had hurt me first. I met her eyes and told her I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it because my story mattered, because showing them who I became despite them wasn't vindictive. It was honest. Victoria reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She told me to do it on my terms, with my head held high, to show them who I was now. I called Marcus the next morning and accepted. I didn't see Chloe in person, but I saw the digital footprint she left behind. Social media makes ghosts visible. She posted constantly. Her senior year was documented in filtered photos and carefully curated captions. Brunches with friends, study sessions that looked more like photo shoots. The perfect college experience. She posted about being so grateful for her parents who supported her every step of the way. The comments poured in, praising her, praising my parents. I scrolled through her profile once, just once, out of morbid curiosity. There were no photos of me, no mentions of a sister in her digital universe. I had never existed. One post caught my attention. Chloe at dinner with my parents, big smiles, wine glasses raised, celebrating her graduation with the two best people in the world. My father looked older, gray at the temples. My mother looked tired, but they looked happy, proud. I closed the app. Through old acquaintances, I heard Chloe was excited about the graduation, a big ceremony. All her friends would be there. My parents were throwing a party afterward. The keynote speaker was supposed to be really good, an inspiring researcher who started a scholarship program. Chloe had replied in a group chat, "Ugh, those speeches are always so boring, but whatever, it's my day." I smiled at that, took a screenshot, and saved it. Not for revenge, just for proof that she had no idea what was about to happen. I wondered if she would recognize me. 13 years was a long time. I had changed, grown up, become someone else entirely. I wrote my speech over 2 weeks, drafting, revising, cutting, adding, reading it aloud to Victoria a dozen times. She advised me not to mention names, to tell the story and let people connect the dots themselves. The speech opened with statistics on educational inequity, students who fall through systemic cracks. Then it shifted personal. At 15, I was told I didn't belong, that something was wrong with me, that I was too broken to keep. I practiced in front of the mirror, watching my face stay calm, composed, professional, but someone saw potential instead of problems. Someone gave me a second chance, and that changed everything. No tears, no anger, just facts, just truth. Marcus arranged everything: parking, credentials, my name in the program. Linda Vance, director of the Phoenix Fellowship. The night before, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Chloe, about my father's voice saying, "Sick daughter," about my mother turning away. Was I doing this for the right reasons? Victoria knocked softly, came in with tea, and sat on the edge of my bed. She asked if I was having second thoughts. I told her I was just thinking. She reminded me that I wasn't the girl they threw away. I was the woman who built herself back up. I sipped the chamomile tea and asked if she would be there. She said front row, always. Morning came too fast. I dressed carefully in a navy suit, professional but not stuffy, and wore Victoria's grandmother's pearl necklace. In the mirror, I looked confident, successful, nothing like the soaked 15-year-old who had been told she was sick. I was ready. The campus was beautiful, old brick buildings, manicured lawns, students in caps and gowns everywhere. The air buzzed with possibility. I arrived early, met the university president, who was warm and effusive, telling me my work was extraordinary. Marcus walked me to the auditorium. Backstage was controlled chaos. I looked at the program, scanning the graduate names. There, row 3. Chloe Sterling, Bachelor of Arts in Communications. My heart kicked against my ribs. I folded the program and told Marcus I was ready. Victoria arrived, wearing a beautiful emerald dress, looking proud. She hugged me tight, telling me I had this. I smiled, head high, truth clear. No revenge, just honesty. The auditorium was filling. Hundreds of people, families, friends. Somewhere out there, my parents were sitting down, probably in the middle section, good view, excited for Chloe's big moment. They had no idea who the keynote speaker was. The president touched my shoulder, giving me the 5-minute warning. I nodded, breathed, smoothed my suit. From the wings, I could see the stage, the podium, the microphone, hundreds of faces beyond the lights. It was time. The president stepped to the podium, and the crowd quieted. He welcomed everyone, speaking of achievement, resilience, and boundless potential. He introduced me, the director of the Phoenix Fellowship, a woman who embodied these values, dedicated to ensuring every student had access to opportunity. The auditorium erupted in polite applause. I stepped into the light. The stage was massive. Beyond the front row, faces blurred into a sea of caps and gowns. I walked with measured steps, confident, calm. My heels clicked against the stage floor, and then I saw them. Row 3, Chloe, cap and gown, honor cords around her neck. She was clapping, smiling, turned halfway to whisper to the girl beside her. Then she looked up and saw me. Her hands froze mid-clap. Her smile faltered. Confusion crossed her face, then recognition, then absolute, unadulterated shock. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Behind her, row 8. My mother and father, still clapping, not looking closely yet. Just polite audience members applauding a speaker whose name they hadn't registered. I reached the podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked out over the crowd. Chloe's face was pale, staring. Her friend nudged her, asking if she was okay. Victoria sat front row, stage right. She nodded once, small, encouraging. I gripped the podium edges. My voice carried clear, strong, amplified across hundreds of people. I thanked the president and stated that today I wanted to talk about resilience, about what happens when you lose everything and find yourself anyway. The audience was quiet, attentive. I told them to let me tell them about a 15-year-old girl. I kept my voice steady, conversational. She was told she didn't belong, that something was fundamentally wrong with her, that she was too broken to keep. My mother's hand gripped my father's arm. I could see it even from the stage. One night, in the middle of a storm, she was put out, told to leave, told she wasn't wanted anymore. Whispers rippled through the crowd, uncomfortable shifting. She wandered alone in that storm for hours. No phone, no money, no place to go. She was hit by a car, nearly died. Chloe had gone completely still, frozen. Her face was white as a sheet. But someone stopped. Someone helped. Someone saw potential where everyone else saw problems. Victoria's eyes were bright, proud. That person became her family, her mentor, her mother in every way that mattered. I paused, letting the words settle. That 15-year-old girl was me. The auditorium went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. My father stood up halfway. My mother pulled him back down, both of them staring, mouths open. Chloe looked like she wanted to disappear through her chair. Students around her whispered, pointed. Her friends looked confused, concerned. I continued, my voice unwavering. I was here today because Dr. Victoria Vance didn't give up on me when my own family did. She taught me that rejection isn't the end. It's a beginning. More whispers spread like wildfire. The Phoenix Fellowship was born from that experience. It exists for students who have been told they aren't enough, who have been dismissed, abandoned, cast aside. I looked directly at Chloe, making unbroken eye contact. Because being rejected doesn't define you. What you do afterward does. Today, that scholarship has helped 47 students. My voice stayed level, clear. Students like the girl I used to be. A woman in the back whispered loudly, asking if that was really her family. I continued, professional, unshaken. I learned something important in those years after the storm. Family isn't always biology. Sometimes it's choice. Sometimes it's the people who choose you when others walk away. Victoria wiped her eyes, smiling at me. I learned that you don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need one person who sees past the surface, past the accusations, past the lies. Chloe's face crumpled. She looked down, shoulders shaking. Her friends had stopped whispering. They were staring at her now, connecting dots. And I learned, I gripped the podium tighter, that success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about building something meaningful despite them. My father's hands were trembling. He looked like he wanted to run, leave, escape. My mother was crying silently, mascara running down her cheeks. So to the graduating class, I left them with this. Your worth is not determined by who stays. It's determined by how you grow after they leave. I paused, letting that land. You will face rejection, disappointment, people who underestimate you. That's guaranteed. But you get to decide what happens next. You get to choose who you become. The standing ovation started slowly, then built into a roaring crescendo. Students standing, faculty, families. Not everyone. My father stayed seated, pale, hands over his face. My mother stood mechanically, clapping weakly, tears streaming. Chloe didn't move. She sat frozen, staring at her lap. I stepped back from the podium. The president beamed, thanking me for a powerful speech. I walked off stage, back into the wings, and I breathed. The ceremony continued. The energy had shifted. Students walked across the stage, but the applause was distracted, uneven. People were still processing my speech, talking, pointing, checking their phones. Chloe's name was called. She stood, walked to the stage. Her smile was tight, forced. Her hands shook as she accepted the diploma. The applause was thin, scattered. She walked off stage quickly, disappearing into the crowd. I saw her friends huddled around her, talking urgently, Chloe shaking her head, trying to explain, failing. My parents sat rigid, not talking, not moving, staring straight ahead. After the ceremony ended, caps flew, cheers erupted, families rushed forward. I slipped out a side door, meeting Victoria in the reception area. She hugged me tight, asking how I felt. I thought about it and said, "Free." Marcus appeared, looking flustered, telling me my family was at the side entrance, asking to talk. My stomach tightened. I asked if I had to. Marcus shook his head, offering to call security. I straightened my jacket and said no, I would talk to them on my terms. 5 minutes. That's it. Victoria squeezed my hand, saying she would be right here. I walked toward the side entrance, toward the family I had left behind 13 years ago. They stood by a pillar. My father's face was gray. My mother's makeup was smeared. Chloe hovered behind them, eyes red, looking like a ghost. I stopped 3 feet away. Professional distance. I asked what they wanted. My father's mouth opened and closed. He stammered that they didn't know I would be here. I replied, sure they didn't. My mother's voice broke, saying I looked well. I told her I was well, and that Dr. Vance made sure of that. Victoria had followed me, standing slightly behind, protective. My father's eyes flicked to her, then away. He said they owed me an apology. I told them they owed me a lot more than that, but an apology was a start. My mother said they made a terrible mistake, that they should have listened. I told them they should have protected me. That's what parents do. I kept my hands at my sides, didn't cross my arms. I told them they chose Chloe's lie over my truth, called me sick, threw me out in a storm. Chloe flinched, tears rolling down her face. My father's voice cracked, saying he was wrong, that he had regretted that night every day for 13 years. I said, good. The word hung there, sharp. My mother reached toward me, asking to talk privately as a family. I told them gently, not cruelly, just factually, that we weren't a family. They made that clear 13 years ago. My father said desperately that we could fix it. I told them there was nothing to fix. They made their choice. I made mine. We were done. Chloe's voice was quiet, broken. She said she was sorry, that she was 12, stupid, didn't know. I told her she was old enough to know what she was doing. Marcus appeared with a folder, handing me the scholarship applications for next semester. My father's eyes fixed on it. He asked if I really did all this. I said yes, despite everything. My mother took the folder gently, opened it, read. Her face crumpled. I told her 200 students, 47 so far, but we were expanding. My father asked if I was a director. I said senior director, as of last month. I took the folder back, explaining I worked with 5 universities, granted over $200,000. The university president joined us, oblivious to the tension, praising my speech, asking my parents if they were proud. Silence. Victoria stepped in smoothly, asking if they weren't proud. My father's jaw worked. He said yes, very proud. The president beamed, shook my hand, and walked away. My father stared at me, really looked at me, saying they had no idea. I kept my voice soft, not angry, just tired. I told them they never asked, that they erased me, pretended I never existed. My mother whispered that she tried to find me, that I disappeared. I told her I changed my name legally, made it harder, that I needed space to heal. My father asked if I did. I said yes, no thanks to them. Chloe's friends approached, 3 of them looking uncomfortable. One touched Chloe's arm, asking if it was true, if I was really her sister. Chloe nodded, unable to speak. The friend said Chloe had told everyone her sister died in a car accident when she was 12. My eyebrows rose. Chloe's face flushed. She said she didn't, that it was easier than explaining. The first friend demanded what there was to explain. That our family kicked me out? That she lied about me? Chloe wiped her eyes, saying they were right. She deserved it. I stepped closer to Chloe. I told her I didn't hate her, that I forgave her for my own peace, not hers. But I didn't want a relationship. I needed her to respect that. She started to argue, but I cut her off. Firm, clear. I told her she made choices for 13 years, choices to keep lying, to keep me erased. That wasn't childhood stupidity. That was who she became. Chloe sobbed. My mother pulled her close. I looked at Victoria and asked if we could go. She linked her arm with mine and we walked away. Didn't look back. Behind us, I heard Chloe crying, my father saying my name, weak, desperate. I kept walking. The week after graduation, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Voicemails from my father, emails from my mother, long and rambling, full of apologies and excuses. I didn't respond. Work kept me busy. The ceremony had gone viral. Someone had recorded my speech, posted it to social media. Hundreds of thousands of views. Comments flooded in, praising me, crying, asking if it was real. I ignored them, focused on work. Then an email came from one of Chloe's former friends. Screenshots of group chats. Chloe's friends distancing themselves, calling her psychotic for lying about her sister being dead. Chloe's carefully constructed social life was crumbling. Part of me felt bad. A small part. The larger part felt nothing, just relief. Victoria and I had dinner, quiet, comfortable. She asked how I was processing it. I said I felt free, like I finally put down something heavy I didn't realize I was carrying. She asked if I wanted to reconcile. I thought about it, really thought, and said no. She nodded, squeezing my hand, telling me I was allowed to walk away. 2 weeks later, my father showed up at my office. He looked 10 years older, gray hair, shoulders slumped. He sat across from my desk, formal like a job interview. He told me Chloe had finally broken down, confessed everything, the lies, the manipulation, all of it. 13 years too late. I knew. I told him it didn't fix anything. His hands shook. He said they had been living with guilt, looking at my empty room, knowing they destroyed something they could never get back. I told him they were right. He asked if I could forgive them. I leaned back, considered. I told him forgiveness wasn't the issue. Trust was. And that was broken, shattered. They believed Chloe's lies over my truth, called me sick, threw me out in a storm. I told him he would never know what it was like to be 15 and homeless in a storm, told by his own father he was too broken to love. Tears rolled down his face. He asked what he could do. I told him nothing. There was nothing he could do. It was too late. 3 days later, an email arrived from Chloe. She confessed her jealousy, her obsession with Julian, how she planned the whole thing. The screenshots, the bruise. She said she told people I died because it was easier than admitting what she did. She said she destroyed my life and her own. She had no real friends, lost her job offer. She wasn't asking for forgiveness, just asking me to know she was sorry. I read it twice, saved it, didn't respond. After the 5th email, I replied, short and final. I accepted she was young, but she had 13 years to correct it. She chose to keep me erased. I forgave her for my own peace, but I didn't want contact. She stopped emailing. My speech went more viral than expected. A local news station interviewed me about the scholarship program. Applications tripled. Funding requests poured in. The State Board of Education sent a commendation. 1 year after Chloe's graduation, my life looked completely different. The Phoenix Fellowship was in 10 universities, helped 83 students. I was promoted to senior director. I dated someone, ended amicably. I was learning that not all endings had to be painful. Victoria turned 60. We threw a party. I gave a toast to the woman who taught me that family is built, not born. She cried happy tears. I thought about my biological family sometimes. Not often, not painfully. They sent a Christmas card. No return address, just signatures. I put it in a drawer, didn't throw it away, didn't respond. I spoke at another graduation. A young woman approached me afterward, tearful, saying it was her story too. I told her she wasn't alone. I drove home that evening to the house I shared with Victoria, my real mother, and felt complete peace. People ask me if I regret that night, the storm, the pain. I don't, because it led me here, to this life, this work, this family I chose. Not every story has a happy ending like mine. I know that. I'm lucky. Victoria found me, chose me, saved me. But everyone gets to set boundaries. Everyone gets to decide who has access to them. You don't owe toxic people your presence, not even if they're family, especially not if they're family. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. You can forgive someone for your own peace while still keeping them out of your life. I learned that blood doesn't make family. Choice does. Consistency does. Showing up does. Victoria showed up every single day for 13 years. She earned the title Mom. My biological parents showed up once, failed, never tried again. That tells you everything. I learned that success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about building something meaningful despite them. The scholarship program wasn't revenge. It was purpose. It was turning my pain into something that helps others. Revenge seeks to hurt. Purpose seeks to heal. I learned that your worth isn't determined by who stays. It's determined by how you grow after they leave. Some people will always underestimate you, reject you, tell you you're too broken. That's their limitation, not yours. You get to decide what happens next. You get to choose who you become. I chose to become someone who helps kids like me, kids who need a second chance, kids who deserve to know they're worth saving. That's my legacy. Not the family that threw me away, but the family I built afterward. So that's my story. The storm that almost destroyed me became the catalyst for everything I built. I'm 28 now. I feel older, wiser, whole. My parents' names are still in my phone. I haven't deleted them, but I haven't called either. They exist in my past, not my present, and definitely not my future. Chloe sends me a message every few months. Short, apologetic. I read them. Don't respond. Maybe someday I will, maybe not. Either way is okay. Victoria is mom now, not Dr. Vance, just mom. She's the emergency contact on every form, the person I call when something good happens. Blood didn't make her my mother. Choice did. 13 years of showing up, of believing in me, of loving me when I couldn't love myself. That's family. Every year on the anniversary of that storm, I drive past my old house. not to punish myself, not to wallow, just to remember. I park across the street, look at those windows, that door, and I think that girl survived. She survived being called sick, being thrown away, being told she was too broken to love. And she didn't just survive, she thrived. If you're in a storm right now, metaphorical or real, know this: you can survive it. You can even thrive after it. Just because someone gives up on you doesn't mean you give up on yourself. Set your boundaries. Choose your family, build your purpose, and never ever let anyone tell you you're too sick, too broken, or too much. You're exactly enough.